What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another episode of At Home with Mark. Today is season 5, episode 6, and we have our good friend Tyler from Acorn Amps. Dude, thank you so much for doing this. I'm so pumped to talk to you. I have a ton of questions, but thank you for the time.
Thank you for having me, Mark. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Of
I'm
course.
just gonna mention what I mentioned before. Like, I'm sorry if the glare gets in the way. I got
That's fine. As long as you can see. Well, you don't really need to see me. You don't need to see this ugly mug. You can still answer
yeah.
questions. Um, Man, I always ask this question when I start off because I'm so curious. I love hearing and knowing like the pathway for people because it's so varied. But like, what is your like earliest musical memory as a kid?
So that's actually it's really funny because like I grew up poor-ish. Not like super poor, but enough to where like if my parents didn't think I was gonna really get into something, and there was enough times where I'm like, I want to do this, and I want you to buy me this thing to help, and it fell off. So my first musical memory, I think, besides like listening to records and stuff like that, when it, because I would attribute my earliest like musical, I like to relate my musical memories to gear, and it was looking through a Sam Ash catalog. I'll
Okay.
never forget when it came in the mail. I was at my dad's house, and I just saw, because I'd seen music videos before and I saw instruments, but it was something about like seeing it obtainable. Like it was in a catalog and there was a price next to them and I could get them because no one I grew up with had musical instruments. I grew up in an area where it was just like a lot of people did a lot of fishing, played a lot of sports. My dad was like the president of the baseball league in our county. And so, yeah, no one I grew up with was into playing music. And so when I saw that first Sam Ash catalog, that was the spark for me. I was like, "Holy crap!" I looked through that catalog like you would look through, like a magazine or read a book or whatever. I kept it, and it was in my room constantly, and I was thumbing through it, and everything was too expensive to get,
Yeah.
especially since my parents, didn't have a ton of money. So that was really my first musical memory. So from there, it kind of went where my parents are like, "We're gonna try to get you an acoustic guitar." And so I got an acoustic guitar, and they made the mistake of letting me bring it on a road trip that we went on the day they got it for me with zero
Oh,
lessons. So that may have been like sort of defeating for me because I was just like, yes, I have this guitar. I'm in the back seat and I'm just like strumming it and playing it. And I mean, to me, to me, I was like, "Oh, I'm making music," and
yeah.
to them, it was like the cringiest thing ever, and they're like, "Never again are you allowed." And we couldn't afford lessons, and like I said, I think a lot of my friends that I grew up with and met later on with, like, they like taught each other. They had each other to. One person went to lessons, and then he came back and shared what he learned with his other friends, and I didn't really have that until high school.
Right.
So
That's
and then so all that to say, like I fell off with that first acoustic guitar experience on that road trip where I basically demolished my family. I punished them. I
Oh man.
punished their ears.
That's so funny. So like you had like the lesson hotline Napster of
Th-
lessons. So like somebody was paying for lessons and then everybody else was soaking up the information from that person like along the
That
line.
that was later on. That was in high school. Yeah.
Okay. Man. So how did you end up with that catalog? Did somebody play music? Like are your folks musical or like how did that happen that you
No, no one. I was the only one in my family. Like my two older brothers, were very much into like you know underground music. I mean, there's no internet. There's literally nothing except for uh, you know uh, like Maximum Rock and Roll and all these old like zines and things like that because they were really into hardcore and punk and all that stuff. So um, it was just like no one in my family, even them, they weren't into playing. They were just into listening. I think my dad had a roommate, and I think he got the catalog because there was a there's a place next to the Sam Ash where we grew up that was a sporting goods store, and I think he like went in, was like interested or something, and signed up, and then it showed up.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
That makes sense. Yeah, it's funny now because it's even now, like if I get like a Sweetwater catalog in the mail, it's totally like the bathroom reading,
yeah,
like, do you know what I
absolutely.
mean? Like, and it's not my sometimes my wife will be like, "Do you want this?" I'm like, "Nah." But other times I'm like, "Yeah, of course I do," because I
Yeah,
want to just like look at eye candy, you know what I mean? And they're
it,
always so thick too. Like some of those are like, because I'm into it all, man. I'm into drums. I have a drum set here. I've got pro audio gear around me, and like so, it's like every like portion of that catalog is interesting to me.
yeah.
So I'm like, don't get rid of that. Don't recycle that yet. You know what I mean? It's
Well,
funny.
it gets even nerdier because there are
Oh.
actually like, as I got more into like the electronic side of things, more so than actually playing, there's a lot of like surplus catalogs.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're familiar with like Mauser and DigiKey part suppliers, Mauser used to give out a physical. They may still. I don't get it anymore because I think it's a big waste of paper. But they used to give out. It was like a phone book. It was their entire catalog in catalog form, and I remember getting it like once a month. And I'm just like, I mean, it's as big as the yellow page, like the phone book used to be.
Yeah.
And that was my reading material. It got real nerdy because I'm like, okay, today I want to go through the like illumination section and start looking at LEDs and neon bulbs and like the different styles of like indicators that they have.
That's hilarious, dude.
Yeah.
So did you like just like somebody would kind of soak up the liner notes on a record? Is that how you started to cut your teeth and understand parts and like how did you formulate that science in your head as a youngster?
So that's actually funny. I'm a late bloomer. And I think it's important to say this because you hear people say all the time, like, if I can do it, you can do it. And especially me, I'm like, bullshit. Am I allowed to curse?
Yeah, 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 of
Am I allowed to
course,
say
yeah.
bullshit?
Of
Okay.
course. If you don't,
um,
I'll call you out on it.
okay. Bull poop.
Yeah,
Bull.
there you go. I just noticed that you put Tyler Potato, by the way. Of course you did.
Yeah. I mean, with my last name being Petito, I got called Potato all the time. So it's just stuck. And I
There you go.
embraced it.
All right, so late bloomer.
Yeah, late bloomer. I remember looking at. I did really poorly in school, so I remember looking at an electronic circuit because I was the classic like I'm taking my toys apart, I'm taking the phone apart. I uh, I was able to like dissect the telephone and figure out how to like tap into phone calls and things like that. And yeah, and I remember looking at it and understanding like I can circuit bend this. I didn't know I didn't use the term circuit bending at the time, but I can like mess with this and kind of manipulate it and figure stuff out. But I remember looking at the components and telling myself like, I'll never know what this is. I was like very like self-defeating. I'm like, because you look at a PCB, a populated PCB from something that's technical, and you're like, there's so much on this. I don't think I'll ever figure it out.
Mhm.
So I kind of had that defeatist sort of attitude early on. Like I said, I did poorly in school. I dropped out of high school, uh, and it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
So what happened is a lot of people don't know this. I actually met Brian Sowers. Do you know who Brian Sowers is?
Why do I that sounds familiar. Why do I know
Brian
that name?
Sowers does Sour Sound. He's huge in Portland. Um,
Okay.
he is an amazing engineer, technician. He winds his own transformers. In fact, his transformers are really taken off, and
Wow.
I mean, he's done stuff for Modest Mouse, um, the Smiths, big
Whoa.
bands. Yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, he's amazing. He's absolutely the smartest person I've ever met, especially when it comes to amplification and audio electronics. He'll probably say otherwise, but he's super special. And I met him by chance because he was living in Orlando at the space where my band lived, and I lived in Gainesville, Florida. They were in Orlando. It's about an hour and a half away. and I ended up moving in, and I went into his room after a long gap of not like doing much technically. I mean, I was doing all sorts of stuff. Like I taught myself how to do home electrical and things like that. But when it came to like actually designing and building circuits, I was, not really into it. I walked into his room and it was like walking into heaven. He had gear everywhere. He had parts. He's he was a lot like me now, or I'm just like super messy. He had like resistors like all in his carpet and like caps everywhere. And he's like feverishly like going through this like Amperex uh preamp, like two preamp that he got from like a local studio that he was trying to like rebuild. And I just remember being like, dude, teach me,
Yeah,
please.
that's great.
Yeah, it was wild. And he ended up doing what I do for a lot of people is he gave me a book called Understanding Electronics and Electrical Fields. Um, and I don't know if he did this for me. I never got the chance to ask him, but or at least I haven't asked him yet. But I did this for people. I did the same thing to kind of like weed people out to see if they would actually cared enough about electronics.
Mhm.
Because when he gave it to me, I just went to town. I remember like weeks later, he came into my room and because he's like, don't come back to me until you finish like the first three chapters. Um, and he had come into my room and I just had notes, pages after pages of notes. He saw it sitting on my thing and he's like, dude, I saw that you're taking notes. Like you're really like I'm ready to help you. I was just like,
Wow,
okay, that's freaking awesome.
man. So he was a mentor in the beginning here of your
Yeah,
career.
yeah,
Wow.
absolutely. He is the spark that took me over the top. I mean, maybe I would have found it later on. No one can really say for sure, but that was it for me
Yeah, but it
on
seems like
this
at that
timeline.
point yeah, but it seems like at that point in your life, it's like you needed that kick in the butt, like, from somebody who knew their shit so you could really kind of learn from them and, like, you already had the thirst and the hunger for it, right? So you just needed to put a name to what you were looking to do.
Yeah, I think
Um,
a lot of it, I don't know if you've ever get into skateboarding or you watch like the Bones Brigade documentary,
of course I
but
have.
well, they talk a lot about, we didn't think a trick was possible, or like, we would be like, have this idea to do a trick, and not everyone, we try it, we not be able to do it. The moment we saw someone do it, we were like, that's obtainable. We can do it. And then the first 540, and then now everyone does a 540 or like the Mick twist or whatever, I
Right.
think was the one. Like, they were just like, once we saw it, we knew it was achievable, and that's kind of what it was for me. I saw it in the flesh, like this room filled with electronics in disrepair, in various stages of repair, uh,
Right.
and it was right there in my face. So,
So what happened after that, Tyler? Like if he I'm gonna fix my lighting real quick. What happened after he was like, I'm ready to help you? Like, was it like a every week, 3 days a week, you were like apprenticeship with him? Like what were you doing to like push the ball up the field?
well, unfortunately, it didn't go as far as I would have liked to, because that's when he ended up. Around that time is when he ended up leaving to Portland. But what he
Mhm.
was doing before then, he'd be like, "Come look at this thing I'm working on. Put your head under the hood and point out the electrolytic capacitors, point out the signal caps or the film caps. Obviously resistors, everyone kind of knows that already. But yeah, just pointing at the various things. He he showed me he showed me like this rehoused Big Muff on it, and I'll never forget. He was like, "So yeah, I want you to take a look at this Big Muff." And we opened it up, and I was like, "What the heck is a Big Muff?" And I just like, I think I took the breath out of him. He's like, "You don't know what a Big Muff is?"
Oh
I was
man, that's
like,
great.
"No, I was poor. Like I didn't, I if I didn't really like, you know, I remember looking, like I said, looking through catalogs, but if it didn't like wasn't bright and colorful or capture my attention like that, or if my friends didn't have it, like I didn't see it."
And they probably didn't have big muffs in like Sam Ash at the time. I mean, what year is this? What are we talking?
So it'd have been like 99,
No, maybe. Yeah, maybe.
99.
But like I didn't really know. I mean, at that time, I mean, what would I have been like 19 or 20? And I mean, I didn't know about a lot of gear. I mean, I had a
Yeah.
TS9 and I had like a couple Boss pedals and a wah pedal, but I didn't have fuzz. I didn't get into fuzz until heavy until probably 2013,
Yeah.
something like that. Now I love it. Now I'm like, that's the main thing I want to use on my pedal board,
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah. So
It's
anyway,
I mean, it's just like I said, if my friends didn't have it, I probably didn't see it.
yeah.
And a lot of times too, I played bass. So, all my friends were way into guitar, so there are too many guitar players to go around. And so if I wanted to jam with people, I was like, oh, I got to pick up the bass or play drums or something like that. So
Mhm.
that's what I did.
That's awesome. So when you're looking at the big muff, that's so funny to say. But when you're looking at the big muff, are you
You said it. I'm
are
in.
you are you like, okay, now like there's this whole other world. I mean, amps is one thing, right? And like a PA speaker or a PA head or an amplifier for a PA is different than like building the small box thing. So were you kind of like, oh, you can do this too?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had, like I said, I had done like a little bit of like circuit building and stuff like that, but it didn't pertain to audio. It was more of like hacker stuff,
Mhm.
phone line tapping and things like that. Um, and and when I saw it was definitely to see like a pedal as it was just like, okay, I think I can start breaking into build something like this. And that's actually when I built my first pedal, which was an MXR D plus. I
Really?
I went as far as to etch the circuit board as well because there weren't a lot of there weren't like what you have now. Like that's I think pedal building is so much more attainable than it was back then because you didn't have you certainly couldn't to access like a board house to be able to make a PCB. You had to order large quantities. You had to know CAD, and the CAD was much more expensive. Obviously, there's like free CAD programs now,
Mhm.
um, but yeah, even before there were things like build your own clone and general guitar gadgets, you had to find the artwork being like the traces of the PCB,
Mhm.
and draw at least the first etchings I did. You draw on a piece of copper clad with a Sharpie because when you use the etchant, it actually won't etch past Sharpie. So you could
Wow.
just draw the traces with a Sharpie anywhere you want the copper to stay, and then you drop it in. It's like you could use like we used to go to like Ace Hardware and get like muric acid and like ferric chloride and do just homebrew etching like buckets
That's
and do stuff like
crazy.
that. Yeah.
Dude. Okay. So why did you do that MXR first? Like, because everybody talks about like the best pedal to start building is a fuzz face
Fuzz
kind of
face,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah. So like, what made you do that first? It seems like it might be more complicated.
So it's funny, like we teach a lot of classes, and first class we always usually teach for beginners is fuzz face.
Hmm.
Then we went to MXR because I find it to be a much more um, versatile pedal. Like that circuit applies more to different genres, I think, than fuzz face does.
Hmm.
So you and it really is pretty simple. It's not as simple as a fuzz face, but it's only about double the components, if that even. Um,
Mm.
I mean, it uses an op amp. If it was discrete, so discrete, the fuzz face is discrete, where there's two individual transistors and a handful of resistors and caps. But because it uses an op amp, you have all these discrete components combined into one package.
Hmm.
So it's not as complicated as you might think, or anyone might think,
Hmm.
um, because it is an integrated circuit.
Now let me ask you this, because I mean, obviously, I know a little bit enough to be dangerous. Like I don't know that much,
It's good.
but op amp, like I've heard that a million times. For the layman person, like describe what is the purpose of the op amp as far as within the circuit.
I mean, so it depends on the circuit. An operational amplifier can be combined or like set up in many different ways. It can be set up as a buffer So you what we call unity gain. So it's going to be give you the same gain in as you get this, gain out, but it does an impedance transformation essentially. So I think one of the hardest things for people to get, including myself, is impedance matching. They don't quite understand it, and once you like start going down it, for me at least, it was very much like I had to reread over and over and over again to to understand impedance matching, because the nomenclature is weird. Like some people will say like input impedance versus output impedance, and what they're saying is like the output impedance like that it's expecting to see as opposed to like what it is. And so,
Yeah,
but
okay.
the op amp can be used to, not to get too technical and drawn out, but because we could talk all day. The It can be used for impedance matching. It can be used as an inverter or a non-inverter, so you can flip the phase.
Hmm,
You can use it as an amplifier, like straight up to sort of drive. What a lot of people use it for is driving a clipping stage,
mhm,
or just for preamplification, just a clean boost, preamplification in general.
hmm,
So yeah, it's
okay.
had a lot of different uses, um, and it was really like kind of like a major improvement in electronics, solid state electronics when it came
Yeah,
out.
okay, that
'Cause
makes
you look at
sense.
the schematic for an op amp for typical uh, um, single op amp, it's insane. It's huge. It's got
Huh,
uh, the setup's called Darlington pairs, and like um, different. I think it equates to like what, 10 or 15 transistors or something like that, depending
mhm,
on the op amp. But yeah, it's a pretty large circuit if it were to be built discrete. In fact, a lot of people do, you know, discrete op amps. They build out the whole op amp with the individual components as opposed to using a pre-assembled package.
right. Man, whew, okay, so I'll have to go back. I'm the same way, dude. Like I have to reread things. If I don't get it, like I have to like go back and like read it. And that's down to just like playing this thing. And if I'm working on something new, and if I don't totally understand and can relate the theory behind what I'm doing, it makes it harder for me to attain it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So I have to like constantly be kind of going back, 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 and then until all of a sudden it's like, boom, it clicks, and then I'm just like, "Oh, duh." You know what
yeah,
I mean? That's how it feels at least. The self-deprecation is high with this one, so it's it's just it's like it takes a while for me for certain things, for sure, to get that, and I think I'd have the same problem if I was started to I mean, first of all, I don't know how to solder at all. I've never soldered anything.
oh, we need to change that, I
I
think.
know, I know.
That's like that now we have to.
Yeah.
I'm gonna send you something. We'll go from there.
Okay. I'm going to
I'm gonna send you a care package. We'll go.
okay, okay. I'm supposed to go down. Do you know Mason Effects? You know Curtis Mason? You know him?
I don't think so.
He makes these amazing, fuzz pedals, and he's in Northern Virginia, and we're supposed to get together, and he's supposed to teach me how to do it.
Oh
Because
wow.
I would love to be able to swap out pickups in my guitar and do just regular maintenance stuff, but I'm so freaking scared to mess something up, you know? So I've
That's why
never
you gotta
done it.
do it you gotta do it on something that you don't care about. Like, you have to,
Uh,
in fact, a lot of times I teach people, I'm like, "Just get a handful of resistors and components and just get like a perf board, like a Variboard or something that you can doesn't matter." Because
mhm,
it's really all about understanding the temperature that you're dealing with, like the tip temperature, and just other things like keeping it clean and how to prep the different surfaces.
right.
Um, and it becomes like second nature. And once it becomes second nature, it's funny that you mentioned that. You do have to worry about ruining things, especially if you're like in a guitar, because I'll see people and they're like, they can solder really well, but they don't see that the shaft of their iron is like about to like singe the wood on their guitar. And I'm like,
Oh
well, you
gosh.
gotta pay attention to the whole soldering
It's
iron,
not just the tip,
even that,
buddy.
not just the active part, especially if there's like wires flying around, and you'll be like, what's that smell? Oh, you've like cooked the whole sheathing off of the wire, paying attention to the tip, but not the shaft of the.
I think we just came up with a T-shirt idea. I think we should put a soldering iron on a shirt and say it's not just the tip.
Yeah. I knew some an innuendo was coming for sure.
All right, so off the op amp thing, and we're talking solid state. Here's the prop I grabbed. I think I told you I have this, but this was my first amp.
Oh boy. Is it a Rage?
It is a Rage.
All right.
Um, and I got a lot of mileage out of this thing as a kid.
Mhm.
But there is I want to talk to you about like your obsession with this stuff because I find it so interesting because you build all these amazing things and like I said in my description of doing the show, like you have one of the best like presences on social media with what you
Awesome.
do. Because I love people that do an amazing job, have this like artful, soulful energy, but then you also don't take yourself seriously too much.
Yeah.
So there's like this camaraderie that is invisible between people like me and watching what you do because I love that stuff. But what is your affinity to this era of gear?
Can I say one thing first based on what you just said? Because I think it's very important
Mhm.
because I think a lot of people experience what I experienced growing up, and it kind of changed me to be the person you just described. And that was going to repair shops and basically like being talked down to. Just
Mm,
like there's this like elitist mentality that comes with uh I think a lot of technicians when they get to a certain level, they're just like think they're better than everyone, and they treat you like crap. And I just like remember being like, I never want to be,
that guy.
yeah, I never want to be that person. So
Yeah.
that's why, and I think it's a fine line. Sometimes I have to explain to people, I'm like, because someone one time said to me when we made a video, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but we were just like, uh, probably like making fun of a mod that we saw or something like that. And they'll be like, "Man, you're brutal to your customers." And I'm like, "Oh no, I talk to my customer. I make sure, hey, is it okay we post this? We're gonna talk about it. We laugh about it, and it's just like so. It's I'm always afraid that sometimes it's gonna come off as like we're being disrespectful in any way. But like you said, it's we try to be as kind, but point out the absurdity of things sometimes at the same time.
That's part of life, man. I feel like why are we here if we can't laugh and enjoy things and laugh at ourselves too? You know what I mean?
Exactly. That's why I think I had to mention it, just so people know, because it's life is too short to kind of
Yeah.
joke around.
No, I hear you, man. I hear you. But yeah, so I just wanted to talk about the PV thing because I had this amp, and then my next amp I think was the special 112,
Hmm.
pretty sure.
Yeah.
And I gigged with that forever. And then I got my big boy amp that I finally got a tube amp. I got the Classic 50, the Tweed Classic 50.
Oh, dude, that amp sounds so good.
It's so great. And I saw Stone Gossard from Pearl Jam was using one, and I'm a huge Pearl Jam nerd. And I was like, oh, maybe that is what I should get. And Mike McCready, meanwhile, is my hero, and he's playing through Marshalls and stuff. And I probably should have gotten a Marshall when I was a kid. But that was a great amp because I toured the crap out of that Classic 50, man. It was in
So
a
good.
trailer up and down the East Coast for years. So what's your whole vibe there? I want to hear where that comes from.
I think anybody who doesn't have like a PV story, I mean, who doesn't have a PV story, right?
Yeah, man.
So it's just like always a part of. I mean, my first amp was a PV TNT because I
Yes.
was playing bass. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
I
played
definitely
through
play guitar through it.
I played keyboard through that thing,
Oh yeah,
man.
it's a
It was
great
great.
amp.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I always talk about PV never breaking. Like if it does break, it's usually some sort of like a broken pot or like a jack or something like that. I remember with my TNT, you had to like hit it on the top, just like bang, to get it to come back. We like cut out all the time. That was way. I didn't know how to solder or do anything. I just knew that if I punched it on the top, it would start working again.
Like the Fonz.
I saw this band FYP, this trash rock punk band on Recess Records back in the day, and they had a TNT that he had to have like flipped upside down, and he had to have his shoe shoved into it. That's how he got it to work. I remember he's like, he's playing doing sound check and he's like, oh, it's cutting out again. And he flipped it over and he took off his shoe and he shoved it in between the chassis and the cabinet and it stayed on the rest of the show. It's like that's a freaking PV for you right there.
Oh man, that's
It's
a great
always a
story.
broken solder joint or like a a lifted jack or something like that. I mean, we definitely there's so many PVs. We see PVs that explode. Of course, it's law of averages. Like it's impossible
Right.
not to have something. But for the most part, with the amount of PVs that are out there, it's insane how tough they are. And again, because there's so many, they're so ingrained in everyone's like musical life. I think that's where the nostalgia is for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm in the PV cult, so there's a few Facebook groups and uh, it's called the main one I'm in is the cult, the PV cult, and that's just all things PV. It's fantastic. Like you said, everyone kind of makes fun of different mods. You see like
Mhm.
I post a few things. I have like a PV that comes in. It's been like recovered with like leopard print or it's like denim. I think we got a couple that someone just took a pair of jeans, covered it
That's
up.
oh
Someone
my
and
god.
it's just like it's always a PV, right?
Oh man.
It's always a PV that's got
Where
something
did that
crazy.
come from? Where did this stuff come from? Like what
Tolex.
yeah, like why I'm just like I mean when you see it it's instantly recognizable
Oh well,
obviously.
PV's Tolex very specifically. It's like the roughest Tolex.
Dude,
It
yeah, I mean
depends
I've
on
definitely
depending on
cut
the
a
era, of
finger.
course.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean this is probably from maybe 92, 91 or 92, I think.
Yeah, the teal series, right?
Yeah, but it
Teal
it,
strip.
it works. I mean, it still works, man, and it's like I did a video a while back. Can I make this PV sound great using boutique pedals?
Oh,
And
nice.
I put a nice reverb through it, and I think I used like the VS Audio Blackbird because I wanted to get that like black panel and then like brown panel Fender kind of thing through it to see if it worked, and it sounded dope.
Yeah,
I was like,
dude,
I could gig
absolutely.
with this and be fine, you
That's
know?
why I can't stand forums, okay? Because you get people in there and they'll just be like, "Oh, you're using that crap or whatever," and it'd be like, I learned that lesson very early on. Fortunately, I was in a music store and there was a Dean amplifier, and it was like, I played it. I'm like, dude, this thing sounds so bad. Haha. I was joking around with the guy. I was the tech there, so I would like come and pick up stuff. And I'm like, oh, this amp sounds so bad. And someone came in while I was sitting there talking to them, picking up gear to take home, and he just plugged into that thing. I think probably he overheard us and was like, "Let me teach these young punks a lesson." And
Right.
he shredded that thing, and I was just like, I'll never do that again. Like
Yeah.
I'll never say it was me. I could not adjust my style or at least or like the style I play was not fitting for that amp. I think that's what makes a lot of talented musicians are the people that can kind of adjust. And I'm
Mhm.
not. Have a very specific genre of music that I play, and if I can't really make it work, then I move on. Plus, I like to collect gear anyway. So,
Yeah, of
but that
course.
was a lesson that I learned from the old Dean amp that I thought was a piece of crap.
What
So a
amp
lot of
was
people,
that?
I couldn't even
The
tell you.
model.
I
I'm
I, I could look it up later and explain. It was a little
alright.
practice amp. It was just
That's
like a little
crazy.
8-inch, kind of like the Decade or the Rage.
Man, that's crazy. What so tell me, what type of music do you play? Like, what do you like to perform?
I usually play like either hardcore or like pop punk, indie.
Okay.
Indie. I say indie would probably be the most. Um, the last band I played with is this band, opposite here, New Junk City,
Oh,
which is kind
nice.
of like a pop punkish with some like country influence
Oh,
kind of
neat,
stuff.
dude. That
Yeah.
sounds dope.
Well, the singer
Nice.
John Vernakis, one of my good friends, he's phenomenal player and songwriter. So
Killing, killing. Um, all right, so from PV, so you're working you just mentioned so casually that you were working as a tech in a store. Um, so at that point, this is way post like you feeling confident getting in the guts and things.
well,
I'm
yeah.
gathering.
Mhm. You can
So
ask. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
no,
interrupt.
no, no,
Sound like
just like so how long were you at that shop and then did that like cultivate more of a confidence in terms of branching out on your own? Like, kind of like Zach Broyles from Mythos. Like, he worked at Carter Vintage for a while. It was kind of tinkering and building stuff and learning more and more about it. And then he kind of was like, I think I can do this. And I find that's kind of like a neat pathway. So was that a little bit of the arc of your story?
I got a funny preface to that. So, a lot of people don't know this about me, but the person that was like the best to me growing up, as far as like teaching me music and just being a really good friend, his name is Alex Suarez. We were bands together. He moved to New York and I stayed in Florida. And he joined the band Cobra Starship. And I was not actively doing like repair stuff as a business. I was just kind of doing it on the side, and I was working as an electrician actually.
Mm,
So like like I said, I was never formally like trained in anything. I just kind of picked stuff up. That would be my talent. My talent was not education, not learning electronics, because as you said before with music, I just had to like reread stuff over and over and over again. It just didn't like stick as easily. My talent was like being able to kind of just have a vision for things, like go in and um like a lot of amp repair is visual inspection when you first start. So before
mhm,
you start learning the equipment, if you can go in and understand like visual inspection, certain things like just like looking for burnouts or looking for broken solder joints and things like that, you can do a lot of stuff without
mm,
being formally educated or having as much experience. And
right.
Alex knew that. And he's like, we're going on tour with this band, Gym Class Heroes. Do you want to be our guitar tech? There's a plane ticket waiting for you to fly to Buffalo in a week.
Whoa.
And I was just like, yeah. I was I was married at the time, and I talked about with my wife, and she was a little reluctant, but we went. I went, and that's it. And I was on a full bus tour with Gym Class Heroes and Cobra Starship, playing pretty big venues, and it allowed me a lot of time to read books and tinker.
Mhm.
So I mean, I have my own bunk. I went
Right.
from just like being an electrician and kind of like slumming it a little bit to being in a bunk on a bus tour.
That's
And just,
awesome.
yeah, it was amazing. It was life changing. I'd never been on a plane before.
Really?
I was 24 years old. I had never been on a plane.
Oh, man, that's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Did you, at that time? Because I mean, touring is kind of like a lot of hurry up and wait, kinda situation, but do you have any good, like, crisis stories from that first tour where you had to, like, "Oh, shit, I gotta fix this, like, immediately." Like, are
Yeah,
there any?
and that's where the talent I had described already, like the visual inspection and just being pretty good with my hands, got me so like what's what I'm looking for. It's desirable, like a lot. So we'd go off and we get support acts, and the support act would come in and they'd have an amp like blow up on stage, and I wasn't their tech, but I just like ran out there, rewired like their cabinet. Like if I was able to like be like, oh, let's check the cabinet real fast, and like they had spares, because the way that these tours were was it was all backlined, right? So there's gear stacked up in front of other gear, and so you could access the gear behind it if you needed, and just kind of quickly get them back in action. Um, I remember, so we were one of the biggest things I remember is we were supporting 30 Seconds to Mars, Jared Leto's band.
Oh, wow, cool.
Yeah, and his gear went out on stage, and his tech was just lost, because a lot of times the people that come out don't they're friends of the band. It was a little bit different with 30 Seconds to Mars because they have more professional techs, but typically they're not really tech savvy. They're like
Mm,
can maintain the instruments, but when it comes to like the deep electronics, they don't quite have as much experience. And so again, that being my expertise, I jumped in and like saved the day and got his rig working after only a few seconds.
dang.
Well, more than that, probably like 30 seconds to Mars. Wow. That
Dads.
was I wish I could say I did that on purpose.
Oh man, it's better when it's more organically a dad joke. So. They just come out of us,
Ah.
man. I just cooked my daughter dinner and I said a couple things and she was like, "Dad." So anyway, continue.
So they fired their tech, and they were like, "You want to be our tech?" And I was like, "Don't fire your tech. I'm with this other band, and I'm not going to be able to go out with you." Like, and they were just like, "Well, he's fired already." So I finished out the next month of the tour, um, working with them. And back to like your original question, there was just like a lot of, you know, we you'd come with a band would come on as support, and they're like, we've been borrowing heads for this whole tour because they can't stop and get a repair done.
Mhm,
Sometimes you can get a rush repair done, but it's usually expensive, and it's just a pain in the butt. So like we've been traveling with this amp for a month broken, and I'm like, dude, let me take a crack at it, and just got a lot of you know cred doing
mhm.
stuff like that, and education for myself. So
Man, that's so cool. I mean, wow. So, like, where did you what happened after that? Like, after that tour was done, like,
So
what
went
was
on a
the
few
next?
more tours. Toured with Panic at the Disco,
Oh, yeah, yeah, I remember.
Cartel, things like that. Um, and it was all the same situation. It was just fixing gear constantly, especially with new support acts coming on, and just in my whole downtime, just reading and tinkering and doing all that stuff. And then it got to a point where it was way too much of a strain on my marriage. I was
Yeah,
gone all the time, and when I came back, it was like all I had were these tour stories. I mean, ridiculous tour stories, and it wasn't good. So
yeah,
I was like, my wife is so smart. She's super school oriented, um, and she is like, you should be an engineer. You should do this for a living. I know because I would. That's what I would talk about was amps and fixing stuff and building. And she's like, just do this. Like, I know you don't want to be on tour anymore, but like you can start working to be an engineer. And I was like,
mhm,
"Pfft, an engineer, yeah, right. But I will, you know, start doing the repair business.
yeah.
I say it like
No,
that because she got me to go back to school, and I became an engineer. So
well,
it's a big thank you to her for sure. For
dude, I mean, I feel like we are blessed to have really supportive people, partners in our lives throughout
so
our
important,
lives. It's
so
crazy, dude.
important.
Super important. I love my wife. It's so much. She's been there for me in every terrible situation and constantly lifting me up. But she's the same way. I can't remember. I said something to somebody that was younger than me one time about getting married. I'm like, just make sure you marry up like I did. Like, marry up. But
It's so true. I mean, it's
yeah.
crazy too because a lot of times it happens by chance. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
people, you don't, you might not know how you grow with someone or someone grows with you if it's gonna like work out. And it's just like I was so blessed to know her for sure. And
Yeah,
I
man.
mean, she has done so much for me. I tell her all the time, I'd probably be dead if it wasn't for her.
Yeah,
So
dude, that's awesome. That's so awesome.
I certainly wouldn't be an engineer.
Well, okay, so we see this is what I just told you before we start. Like it's already quarter of, and I've
I know.
asked you two of the questions. So I want to ask you really quick about just like piggybacking off the PV stuff with the solid state pedal
Yeah,
that you
absolutely.
made. Um, so the first time I saw that, and I was like, because I'm a gear nut. First time I saw that was Sean's video when he started posting about it.
Edge of breakup.
Edge of
Yeah,
breakup,
sure.
yeah. And I was like, "Oh, wow." Like, and it brought so many happy butterfly feelings inside of me because of this Rage 108 kind of thing. And then I started following you and laughing at all your hysterical videos. The last one, but I sent you a message, but that last one about the Stevie Ray tone was so freaking hilarious, dude. That was by far my favorite so far.
That's
Um,
great.
but um, but the solid state thing, so, like, I find this really interesting about cats like you who do this stuff where you hear about something, whether it's Josh's amp that he uses his secret weapon or whatever it may be, but there's this tone that you are probably hearing in your head, right? That you're like, "I wanna find out how to put this in a box." how does one start that process? Because it seems to me so insurmountable. Like I can't even imagine like trying to chase that dragon.
So we almost didn't do it just for the optics of it.
Mm,
So I mean, like I said, we are generally liked by people. We try not to be dickheads. Of course, you have a lot of people that some people it doesn't matter, but for the most part, like our fans love us and we love our fans, and it's because we're, I think, genuine and nice. And it was tough for me because I knew the optics of it was like exactly what we've heard. We've gotten the most guff from this pedal from people who are, I think, I mean, love PV, and I don't know. I've tried to deduce what their issue is, but they don't think a $50 practice amp should be, because I mean the price of that amp skyrocketed as soon as Josh made that announcement, and
mhm.
you couldn't get this amp for less than like 600, sometimes even $1,000. I saw sometimes,
That's
and people
crazy.
were like genuinely like wanting that sound, and it it came to us from a customer. A customer came to us and was like, "Dude, I cannot get this amp. I've been trying in pawn shops." Some people, in the PV cult, they'll be like, "I got a decade for $20 at at a pawn shop." It's like, okay,
Gas
great.
station would be
Not
cooler.
every yeah, gas station, that would be amazing. I wouldn't be surprised. I
I got a
found
pack of
beer.
Slim Jims and a decade. Mm,
Would you like a
mm,
decade to go with that Coca-Cola?
hell yeah.
Yes, please. Yeah.
All right, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, 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 no. It's great. Um, so the not everyone has that pawn shop find or gets to go to it, whatever. And that's the way it was for this person. They're like, dude, I will pay you to make the pedal for me. And I was like, I don't really know. And like, it seems like kind of a weird move. But what happened is he was like, listen, I'll pay you $300 and you make the pedal. And I was like, I'm only gonna I would have to charge you a lot more if I'm doing like a one-off pedal of this like crazy
Yeah.
circuit. And I was like, but if we decide to go production with it, I'll charge you that. And we just started diving in. I mean, it's a beast. It's a beast of a build to put into a pedal because we don't do surface mount. I have nothing against surface mount, but I just think I wanted to be as genuine as possible.
Mhm.
So we did through hole. A lot of the through hole we did was actually has to be vertically mounted, like F type mounted, it's called, instead of U type, to fit all the components inside of a Hammond 1590 BB enclosure.
Wow.
And then uh as I was like digging through the schematic, I realized more and more. I mean, I knew the preamp out on that schematic is actually after the power amp. So even if someone was going to track with it, they will be accessing the power amp to line out that amp to console or whatever. And
Hmm.
so I was like, I think to make this as genuine as possible, we got to put the power amp in it. And
Man.
that is really where it kind of got off the rails because it was like, okay, we're going to put a 10-watt amplifier into a pedal. People have done it before, but usually it's class D. And this is class AB, so it's has a lot more heat restrictions, thermal conditions that need to be satisfied, and surrounding circuitry that is larger scale. Kind of the trade-off with Class D and Class AB is you have to have more components with Class D, but they can be smaller wattage handling because they don't heat up as much and they don't waste as much energy. So again, we're back to these like bigger components. It's capacitively coupled output, which means it has to have a big fat capacitor on the output. And and we were just like, well, if we're putting the power amp chip in it to get the preamp out, we might as well obviously put the jack in it to make it an amp on its own. And so that's what we did. It took several iterations. Um, but we were so, I mean, it sounds better than a decade for sure. And
Oh,
that's
dude, it's
anytime
dope.
someone like comes at me, they're just like the decade. I'm like, don't even I don't even talk about the decade anymore. Like it's not it's just like not on the table as part of the discussion. Like I don't want to have the Queens of the Stone Age discussion anymore. listen to the pedal. It
Right.
sounds insane. We were so,
Well,
and that's why if it sounded like crud, if it sounded like a practice amp, we weren't gonna put it out. But it just blew us away. We made a couple more tweaks to it to just kind of make it a little bit more compact. And um, our next step is to offer the preamp only, um,
mm,
and then possibly the power amp only
wow.
in stereo. I just Sean from Edge of Breakup. And I was gonna say, like, when you're talking about him, he's just a phenomenal player. Like, he's so good. I
Yeah.
think we're sending every piece of gear in the future from now on.
Nice.
But he is like, I need an effects loop on this pedal so bad, and I think we're satisfy that for him. We got to come up with a name for
Oh,
the
nice.
effects loop. Did I say effects loop? I
Yeah,
may
you
not
did.
have.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
what I was gonna say about it was that you took something that was like not knowing the story about this customer, but like you took something that was this idea and this thing in the this tone in the ether of the guitar universe, and you kind of push it forward, which I think is what ultimately what you when you really stumble upon something that's cool, like a cool circuit. I think from the outsider looking in, anytime a pedal or a piece of gear becomes available that is that attractive to us as players, it's always because it started as this one thing, but it turned into this beautiful butterfly, you
Yeah.
know? And
We were
like I
very ecstatic.
yeah, I think that's what happened with this. And like and when I heard him playing it and stuff, I was like, that thing is it's got a vibe. It's got like this it's different. And like I've gotten into a headspace as a guitarist that I don't really like tube screamers anymore for some
Right.
reason.
Oh yeah.
I can't
You know,
get along with them.
a lot of people are getting out of the tube screamer game for sure. I think
Yeah.
it's kind of a muddy circuit. It can get a little too thick. It fights the bass guitars depending on if you're playing in a band or not. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I do. I do a lot. So that's the thing. Is like I started to realize because I like darker tones. I play a lot of slide guitar. I play in baritone tunings, and it is not a sound that I want to put with that configuration as a
sure.
guitarist. Like this thing is an open C, so it's
Oh,
like so it and it's and I just posted a video before this that I shot today. It was just playing through my buddy Chris Evans OCE pedals. He just
oh
put
yeah.
out he just put out the pliers, and it's a boost, and it's like a blues breaker circuit. But again, like I've never been like attracted to the blues breaker circuit, but I do feel like what he did was what you guys did with that pedal, with the solid state pedal. It's like he tweaked it. There's something
Yeah,
different about it that is more attractive to me and makes me more inspired to play my instrument.
absolutely.
So it's that's the stuff that I love about what you guys do in this industry. Because yes, are there a gajillion pedal builders nowadays? Yes. But not every guitar player is gonna be in that lane where like that they like this company's pedals, or they might like what you do better than JHS or vice versa, or that's what's cool about it, is like there's always like this mindset, this hive mind, where you find your group of people that resonate with what you do. And I think you got a really cool thing going on, man. It's really fun to watch. So
Awesome.
just wanted
Appreciate
to
it.
say that. Yeah, man.
I
um
love builders. I love to see what people do. I like to be a contributing factor to the community, and I know some people will be like kind of dogging people for getting into starting to build pedals, and I just think I really like to support people who want to build and show an interest because, like I said, for me it felt unobtainable.
mhm.
Not obtainable, unobtainable. That's the word, right?
Unobtainium.
Yeah,
I don't know.
dude.
Plutonium. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But
But
I just like that. So that's I feel like my mission in life for people is to be like, you think you can't do it? You can, but prove to me like you have a little bit of a desire. Here's a book, go and read it, come back to me, do the projects. And I want to say too, what you said about music and having to reread it over and over and over again. That's what I think was so special about the book that Brian Sowers gave to me, because in the preface it says very much that thing. Like when I was a kid, I was learning electronics, and all the books that were available to me were like these books that were written by like these German engineers, and like I didn't understand anything. And like I tried another book, and it was written by this other person. And it's just written in like this like language that is just not easy to pick up. So the author, was like, I have written this book to try to make this as simple as possible. You're going to need to reread this book over and over and over again. So don't be discouraged. And I think reading that for me was like, okay, it's okay to have to reread this over and over again. This person who wrote this crazy book that's incredible struggled with electronics. So
Yeah.
I like to provide that for people if I can with classes and all that stuff.
That's amazing, dude. I mean, and I think, knowing you're not alone in that boat, because you can kill yourself building an amp and working on an amp if you don't know what you're doing. So, like, let's
That's
be
the
real.
that's the other conundrum I sort of an internal battle, especially with talking to people online, because people will contact me like, oh, can you help me like do this mod or like fix this? And I'm like, I want to help you, but I don't want you to die. Like, so I
Dude.
don't want to discourage you, but I want you to be as safe as possible. That's why we used to actually, when we were doing repairs, we had no bench fees, because I couldn't, I was like, I don't want to troubleshoot this over the phone. They'd be like, how much do you think this is going to cost? And what do you think you need to do? And I'm like, I don't even want to try to figure it out on the phone. Bring it in. If it becomes something you can't afford, no bench fee. Take it back, get a second opinion, do whatever you want. But that was kind of like the reason for that aspect of Acorn when we were doing repairs.
Yeah. That's
So, but
cool, man.
it's tough. I try to be helpful, but remotely, it's really tough for me because I like the safety aspect is so important.
Oh
But I
my
don't
god.
want to discourage people. I want them to be as cautious as possible and understand. Even if an amp is off and unplugged, it can still kill you. So
Uh-huh. Dude, I have I bought a Two Rock Studio Signature back in like 2015 or something like that. It was like my dream amp. I wanted a Two Rock from when I was like in my early 30s or whatever.
yeah.
So I got one as a midlife crisis or whatever. And Eli from Two Rock was like, "Here, because I bought a head and a cabinet. He's like, I'll send you a combo loaded with a speaker. So if you go to a gig that's a smaller load in that you just need to grab and go, you can take the chassis out and put it in the combo." And I was like, "Sweet, that's awesome." The first time I pulled that sucker out, I probably accidentally just grazed the capacitor when I was pulling it out, and I was like, and I was like,
Oh, dude.
"Okay, okay, okay,
Yeah, dude.
okay.
Not a good
Slow
feeling.
down, brother." It's like, so now when I do it, man, I am like, super careful. Because I mean, how long can capacitors hold a charge? Like a year, 2 years? How long
I
can they
mean, it
hold a charge?
depends. It depends. Usually, you'll have there's some internal resistances that'll allow them to trickle out like the charge quicker than
Right.
that. And then good designs, or at least like later on when they realized that they would have these like bleed resistors in, so it would bleed out the
Okay.
um the electrons like before, not before too long. But they
Wow.
can hold charge, and in an ideal state, like when you're learning electronics and all that stuff, they can hold a charge indefinitely.
Dang. Yeah. So be careful, people. Be careful out there. Don't do stupid things. All right. Tyler, you ready to do this lightning round get down?
Yes.
Here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna ask you 10 questions. I'm gonna put on a metronome for some suspense because it's the way I do things here because I'm terrible. Um, I'm gonna ask you 10 questions. You can burn right through them if you want, or you can, give me an explanation of why you answered it the way you answered it. Not
Oh, cool. I'm
mandatory,
scared. I'm
but
scared now.
feel
I don't.
free.
This is. I'm not. I don't like putting. This is a lot of pressure.
Don't be scared.
Are you-
All right, here we go. First one's
yeah.
always the same. Lennon or McCartney?
McCartney.
Okay. Ron Burgundy or Ricky Bobby?
Oh my gosh, that is a tough one. I'm going Ricky Bobby.
Okay. On a scale of how much you love cheese, wheel of cheese or a single string cheese?
Oh yeah, I'm a wheel of cheeser.
Okay. All right. Jazz Master or Jaguar?
Jazz.
Okay. If you're going to deal with an annoyance, would you rather deal with a pebble in a shoe or a shirt tag that's bothering you?
Probably a shirt tag.
Okay. Fair enough. King of the Hill or Family Guy?
King of the Hill. Bill, who's 1/3 Acorn. So we have Bill Walters and Andrew Elsner. Right? It's important for me to say. Acorn would not happen without those two guys. Bill, who runs the show, loves King of the Hill. So we watch it in the
Nice.
shop all the time.
I love that show too. Bandit or Special 112?
Bandit.
Yeah, that's a good
I'm
one.
talking OG Bandit.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
That thing was dope.
Silver.
Bagels or donuts?
Oof, that's a tough one. Depends on the day. I'll say donuts.
Okay. 6v6s or 5881?
5881.
All right, and here's the last one. You made it to the end. Sometimes it's the hardest, sometimes it's the easiest. If you could choose one album, doesn't have to be your favorite album of all time, but choose one album that you can erase from your memory. So like you've never heard it again. So you could go back and listen to it again to experience it for the first time now. What album would that be?
Wow, that's a question I've never thought of.
That's why I'm here for you.
I'm going to have to say, I know this is going to be cheesy for a lot of people, but Jimmy World Clarity.
Okay, why? Tell me why.
That
That's
record was like huge between me and my friends growing up. Like, I mean, every all-nighter, every road trip. I mean, there's so many stories I have behind it. Just that is actually like almost, it's funny to say, like, to choose that record and say it's almost flawless, but it is almost flawless. But I don't think I know of a flawless record. So it's as close to flawless, I think, as you can get. And
I
it's
love
tough
that.
to listen to now because I've just listened to it too many times.
Right. Yeah,
But it's funny. I'm sorry, you go.
No. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I have a few like funny stories, especially the last song, "Goodbye Sky Harbor." It's like 16 minutes long, so it's like
Is it?
it's a standard song for like it's like 3 minutes or something like that, and then it just goes off into this like repetitive sort of building constant.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so my friends and I would be like, if we're putting on Clarity, we're listening to the whole thing. That's even the 16-minute song, because there's just like nothing to it really. Like it'll go through like you know, uh, just like I said, like different builds. It starts off very repetitive, and then it keeps going and building and building, and it gets layered, more layered and more layered. One time we put it on a jukebox because there was a jukebox that was attached to the internet, so you could put any song you wanted on it. And we were at this like dude bro pool hall, and we put our money in, and you could choose 5 songs, and we put it on 5 times in a row.
Dude, I have the same story.
Yeah.
We did the same thing when I was in college. There was this just total like hole in the wall bar with this. The staff were terrible. We were there, we were drinking, and they were just like, we weren't even being like, belligerent or anything. We were just hanging out, but like the locals did not like the fact that these like 4 college kids were hanging out. So we did the same thing, but it was a Britney Spears marathon. We put a bunch of Britney Spears on her, like, peace, and we rolled out.
Dude, that's amazing. Well, we stuck around to see what would happen, because we were just like, it was my friend Dave Walton and I. We were just because we were playing pool and they were being dicks, and we are just like, look, dude, let's just do this. But we're gonna stay here, and we're gonna witness this. And it went for like 6 or 7 minutes, and we just start seeing people like, what is this? I mean, because it's like repetitive, it just keeps going. And then the bartender switched it, but didn't realize like the first part of the song was that second part, because it's more of a traditional song in the beginning. So it plays, and then it gets to that repetitive part again after like 3 minutes, and everyone's just like, this song again? What the heck? And then he flicks it to the next song, and he realizes it's the same, and he yanks the cord on the jukebox.
I love that. It's like the simple things, Tyler. It's like that's a harmless crime. Come
Yeah,
on,
it
let's be
is.
real. It's so fun. It's
It
like
was fantastic.
psychological warfare. I love it. All right, so takeaways from today: soldering irons. It's not just the tip. It's hot. If you go to a gas station and you can get some Slim Jims and a Decade for $20, add it on.
And call me, and I'll buy
And
it for you.
and the third thing is you should tell us where they can find all your information so they can buy your wonderful products.
Oh, absolutely. Uh, most everything is located at acornamps.com in the gear page, gear section. I encourage you to also follow us on Instagram, Facebook. We have a TikTok, although we don't really like vary the content too much between the three platforms. So if you like one over the other, then go for it. We will probably in the future mix it up, but yeah, social media for what we like to think is entertainment and fun videos and just kind of a joke, a jokey look at the world of music and music gear.
Yes, sir. I highly recommend it. I love everything that they do. And really quick, just to show people some love, my buddy Mario is in here lurking, showing some love. Hope you're both well. BV, who's my moderator. Thanks, BV. Yeah, it's okay, buddy. Saying hi. And see, coolest, most interesting guest. See, Tyler, you are a part of that group now.
Oh, thanks, Joel. Appreciate you.
Yeah,
Hopefully, it
man.
wasn't too painful.
Oh no, not at all. And BV was chimed in about normally cap will discharge over a few days, assuming it's been off all that time.
Yeah,
Safest practice assume there's a charge unless
yeah,
a new test
exactly.
is measured. Yeah. Well, Tyler, dude, thank you so much for doing this, man. It's wonderful to hang out with you and hear more about your story. I loved every second of it. So thank you again for your time.
Dude, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to have me on.
Yeah, man. So hang tight, everybody. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. We'll see you next time.